President Biden now facing a Republican-controlled House, and the reality that some of the key wins paving the way to GOP victory were in district he won in 2020. The number of House Republicans now in crossover seats nearly doubling since Biden took office. One of those winners even defeating DCCC Chairman Sean Patrick Maloney. New York Congressman-elect Mike Lawler says he owes his success to this. Well, David Avella, GOPAC chairman, and Leslie Marshall, Fox News contributor. Great to see you both on this holiday week. Appreciate you joining us. So, David, first to you. I mean, Mike Lawler ran a race that we were all watching very closely. I can remember Sean Duffy saying to me at one point that that was the House race to watch, right? And he was able to flip that against a very powerful Democrat in Washington, Sean Patrick Maloney. So, you know, the obvious question, are any lessons learned, and what does this indicate for 2024?
We get majorities by winning those very districts that you just had on the screen, Sandra. We expand our majorities by going after Democrats in Trump districts and holding them accountable for being the conservatives they campaigned on. McCarthy in the first month should make Democrats vote on whether we're going to keep the child tax credits that were passed in 2017. We ought to be having votes on whether we're going to secure the border to keep fentanyl out. We ought to have a vote and make Democrats say whether they're going to be for making it easier to allow permitting for more oil and gas. If these Democrats who ran as conservatives won in 2022 want to keep their seats in 2024, they ought to show that they actually do want to work with House Republicans to move the country forward.
Leslie, what say you? Because you look at that race that Mike Lawler ran, and he just said it there. He said, I made it about inflation, about crime, about the border, about what he heard voters cared about the most. And he was able to flip that seat.
Then he was listening to me, Sandra, because as a Democratic strategist, that's what I was telling everybody in my party to do. People would constantly ask me, what's the #1 issue? I said, well, it really depends on your state, and it depends within that state on your district. And Lawler's a perfect example of that. Look, 5 Democrats flipped red seats to blue. Republicans did better than that numerically. But let's look at what Lawler did do. He said, I don't buy into the conspiracy that the election was stolen. He distanced himself, in a sense, poo-pooing Trump. 1. 2, he did focus on what really mattered, even more than inflation in that district specifically, and that was crime. And 3, he was very moderate regarding abortion. What we saw in, whether it was the state of New Hampshire, we had a lot of crossover voters. The bottom line is the voters didn't like extremists, whether they were on the left or on the right, and Lawler benefited from that.
And he spoke to everyone. I saw him on a lot of different networks, talking to a lot of different publications, trying to get his message out. Meanwhile, President Biden ringing in his 80th birthday, guys, making him the oldest commander-in-chief in our nation's history. The milestone birthday comes amid questions about a potential Biden 2024 run. Pressure is mounting now on the president to skip it, even from some within his own party. A Washington Examiner op-ed straight up says, please don't run. Quote, a decision at this point to run again for president can only be an act of selfishness. It would be a total failure to put country above personal ambition. It is time for Biden to step aside and for anybody else, to lead the Democratic Party. Leslie, do you want him to run again?
I think it's his right to run again, and right now I think he should. We've just had a very good midterm election, one of the best when you have that party, the Democratic Party, in power, and when we lost the House by a couple of seats, actually, and that's going to make it, harder for Kevin McCarthy. But what bothers me here, Sandra, is everybody gets on Joe Biden, and I also hear people talk about Senator Feinstein, but I don't hear things about Chuck Grassley or Richard Shelby, who are 87 and 86 respectively. What's with the ageism? If you can do the job, the numbers shouldn't matter, especially when you just look at the youth vote that we had in the midterms for Democrats who were supporting not just Joe Biden, obviously, but Joe Biden's administration, his agenda, and the Democrats within his party in this latest midterm election.
Well, the president's going to quickly realize his 82-year-old colleague, Nancy Pelosi, being gone is going to be a disaster for him, because now there is no one to keep the progressives in line in the U.S. House. And you're going to see, and Chuck Schumer's already given the agenda over to Nancy Pelosi's allies in Andrea Ocasio-Cortez and the squad, and Schumer has no problem with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren running the show in the Senate, and the president's going to have a far more progressive party to deal with as he gets ready for re-election.
Very interesting perspective from both of you. Appreciate you joining us on this Monday ahead of the holiday. Thanks so much. David, Leslie, thank you.
Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving.